The night in New York was swallowed by a raging blizzard, snow lashing against the glass walls of Cross Tower as if to tear the city apart. On the very top floor, Nathaniel Cross, the ruthless billionaire, was about to make a call to fire one of his branch managers, but with a single wrong digit, the line connected elsewhere. What came through wasn't the sharp tone of an executive. It was the trembling voice of a child. "Sir, my mom is very sick. Please help her." Nathaniel froze. A call meant to end someone's career had just opened a door that could change his own life forever. Chapter 1. Crossed Wires. The blizzard erased the city one white breath at a time. From the top of Cross Tower, the streets looked like ghost veins under frosted glass, ambulance lights muted to pale rubies, steam rising from manholes like exhausted prayers. Nathaniel Cross watched for a second longer than he meant to, palms braced on the cold pane, the skyline stacked beneath him like trophies. He had built this view with immaculate numbers and merciless timing. Precision was his religion. Deviation, heresy. The call he was about to make fit the liturgy. Clean, inevitable, regrettable only in the way winter is regrettable when one has a plane to catch. He scrolled to the Tacoma branch director's contact, double-checked the digits, and pressed call. A tone. A ring. Another. Terminate effective immediately. He rehearsed under his breath. Each word clipped down to the bone. Hello? Not the flat readiness of an executive assistant. Not HR. The voice was small, frayed at the edges. He frowned. Who is this? A breath, and then, Sir, my mom is very sick. Please, can you help her? Silence reached up from the carpet and wrapped around his ankles. Nathaniel looked at the phone as if the glass could be explained by glare, by snow, by anything except error. Your name? He asked, and heard how different his voice sounded when he wasn't using it to end a life at payroll. Lily, the child said. I'm 8. My little brothers are here. We don't know what to do. A muffled cough came through, the kind that scraped. Somewhere near the phone, a baby cried once and then hiccuped into quiet. Nathaniel's jaw set against a memory. A kitchen so cold the milk turned to slush in the jug. A woman lying on linoleum, whispering that she'd be fine. A number dialed that rang and rang and rang. What's your address, Lily? She gave it in a rush, like a secret she'd waited too long to tell. Sunset Avenue, South Brooklyn. 3rd floor, apartment 3C. The name on the buzzer read H. Hale. Is there an adult with you? He asked, even as he was already reaching for his coat. My mom, she keeps sleeping. She says she's okay, but she's too hot. And we don't have much food. He ended the call without goodbye, not from coldness, but because words were suddenly clumsy things. The snow flung itself against the glass as he shrugged into wool and leather. Nathaniel crossed the quiet office, lights falling awake in his wake. Elevators sighed him down 50 floors. Security stood as he passed. Car brought around, Mr. Cross? I'll drive. Sir, the weather... He was already out into it, breath vaporizing. The private garage yawned like a steel cavern. He chose the SUV with new snow tires and the least personality, punched the gate remote, and slid into a city narrowed to a single lane of scraped gray. His chief of staff, Rena Wells, called as the wipers fought ice. Nathaniel, your 9:30 with the Zurich board moved up. They're awake early. Something about freight futures. Reschedule, he said. The bluntness made her pause. Reschedule Zurich? Yes? He considered saying more, decided that explanations diluted action. And do me a favor, on my authorization, call Metromed Concierge. I want a house call to Sunset Avenue, Brooklyn, apartment 3C, name Hale, chest infection, possible dehydration. Bill it to my personal. A beat. He could practically hear Rena sitting up straighter on the other end. Copy, she said, professional curiosity tamped down to a single syllable. Anything else? Groceries, he added, the word unfamiliar as a foreign currency. Basics. Deliver within the hour. Understood. He hung up as a plow grumbled past, sending a ridge of snow against the SUV like a white wave. Street by street, Cross Tower vanished behind him. The neighborhoods lowered from glass to brick to tired siding. Brooklyn, in this weather, made honesty of things. Which buildings had money, which had landlords who answered phones, which had tenants who learned not to call. Sunset Avenue slouched under the storm. The building at Lily's address wore its years without apology. Mailboxes with jury-rigged latches, a front door that had to be lifted while turning the key, a corridor that smelled of detergent and old paint. He buzzed 3C. The door upstairs opened before the buzzer had finished complaining. The stairs held the damp hush of places where people keep their voices low, out of habit. On the third floor, a girl waited with one hand on the jamb. She had a red knit hat pulled crooked over hair that needed a comb, and she was trying very hard not to look frightened. "Lily," he said. She nodded. Up close, the bravery in her face rearranged itself into relief. "You came." Then she stepped back to let him in, as if he had always been coming and had merely been delayed by weather and the complicated nature of adults. The apartment made itself small around its contents. A sofa with one decent cushion, a low table crammed with crayons and homework pages, a tiny kitchen with 2 mugs and a pot left soaking. A bedroom whose door was half closed. Inside that crack, he saw a woman on the bed, sweat beading her hairline, a blanket kicked to her shins. "Mom," Lily whispered. "He's here." The woman's eyes opened to slits. She took a breath, as if it had edges. "Who?" "Nathaniel Cross," he said. The name changed the air. He softened it with, "You can call me Nate." Her mouth tilted like the hint of a smile, and then didn't. "We don't need charity." She coughed once and pressed a knuckle against her ribs. Up close, he read the blue under her eyes, the split lip, the hands of a person who lifted more than paper. "Good," he said. "I didn't bring any. I brought a doctor. He's on his way." It was bluff and promise at once. He took the glass from the nightstand, rinsed it, refilled it from the tap till it ran cold, and brought it back. The girl had 2 brothers, one with hair sticking up like electricity and the sovereign solemnity of 6, the other a small pajamaed galaxy of blueberries and milk, thumb tucked under his chin in a way that felt like muscle memory from 1,000 households. "I'm Ben," the older one offered, bracing uncertainty with introduction. "Milo," the little one said, but it came out Mio. Nathaniel nodded to each as if they were board members. He turned to the mother. "Ms. Hale?" "Sophie," she corrected, not out of friendliness but because formality took energy she didn't have. The surname hit him a heartbeat later. Hale, like the name on the buzzer. "Can you sit?" he asked. Slowly. She tried. The cough that came up felt deep and wet, like something had taken root. He half lifted her shoulders until she was propped by pillows. She permitted it with a frown that said she did not owe him this and was giving it anyway for the sake of oxygen. Fever 2 days, Lily whispered, as if reporting to a nurse. She says she's fine, but she's not fine. Nathaniel's eyes flicked to the kitchen. On the counter lay a short, heavy stack of paper clipped together with a bulldog clip. The top sheet had columns, dates, signatures. He didn't move toward it. He forced himself to look away. The doctor first. He boiled water for tea because that seemed like an action that could be taken without asking permission from the past. The kettle was dented and clean. From the pantry, he found 1 box of tea with 3 bags left. He set mugs in a line like he was leveling a laser. The knock came 19 minutes later. Soft, efficient. Nathaniel opened it to a woman with a black bag and the posture of someone who had done this many times in rooms with many kinds of silence. "Dr. Neha Rao," she said. "Metro Med." She glanced at Nathaniel, at the living room, at the kids. Her assessment took 2 seconds and turned into motion. In the bedroom, she worked with the quiet speed of competence. Thermometer, oximeter, stethoscope. "Pneumonia," she said finally. "No drama, just diagnosis. Left lower lobe. We'll start antibiotics today, steroids and fluids. If I see any drop in oxygen or altered mentation, we go in." Sophie tried to sit taller. "We can't afford—" "It's covered," Nathaniel said, before she finished the arithmetic. "Fully." Her eyes sharpened on him. Something like irritation and gratitude crossed there and canceled out to a complicated neutrality. "And you are—" "A wrong number," he said. The truth inside it settled in the room like a new piece of furniture. While Dr. Rao prepared a nebulizer treatment, Nathaniel set the kettle back on and opened the cabinets, as if there might be more food hiding behind the lack of it. He found rice, a half-box of pasta, peanut butter with the spoon still in it, a bag of apples shrinking toward cider. He began slicing as if he did this every Sunday, as if he had ever sliced apples in a kitchen that wasn't asking anything of him. When he carried a plate into the bedroom, his eye fell on the clipped stack again. He didn't mean to look. He knew better than to look. He looked. Temperature logs, Bay 6, North Freezer. Month, October-November. The columns were stark. Date, time, meter reading, variance, reported to, initials. On a third of the lines was a star, then a note in a quick, precise hand. Sensor failure suspected, manual reading taken, or product at risk, 45 minuen, manager informed, or, once, forklift operator almost struck due to fogging, visibility hazard reported. And the initials in the corner of every notation. SH. He turned 1 page. Another. The handwriting stayed steady even where he saw the smudge of rain or sweat. The pages weren't printouts, they were copies, carbon sheets he could almost feel in the indentations. There were email printouts too, subject lines with the clean horror of bureaucracy. RE, temperature variance, please advise. RE, report dismissed. Protocol question. He picked up 1 page, and a second slipped from the clip and skated under a cereal bowl. He reached to fish it out. And Lily's voice came quick and defensive, like she'd been rehearsing it in her head for weeks. "Those are my mom's," she said. "She wrote them because the computers kept saying everything was fine. But it wasn't fine." Sophie closed her eyes for a second and opened them again. "Lily." "It's okay," Nathaniel said quietly. He stared at the logos in the margins, the ones he'd approved for printing. The legal language he'd had his attorneys write, so phrases like due diligence landed like satin. Cross Logistics, in careful sans serif. His company, his standards, his signatures, dotted through other documents like fingerprints he couldn't wipe away. He set the stack down exactly as he'd found it, and went very still. Inside his mind, a clean room lit up with screens. Numbers that had nestled comfortably into curves and trend lines suddenly looked like masks. Behind them he saw teeth, risk that had been smiling for the cameras. Dr. Rao finished with a soft click of plastic, the nebulizer mist curling up like steam from some strange tea. "You'll feel better in an hour," she told Sophie. "You'll feel like yourself in a few days. I'll stop back this evening." She looked at Nathaniel. "We'll need the pharmacy pickup right away." "I'll take care of it," he said. When the front door closed behind the doctor, the apartment recalibrated in the quieter noise of a heater that couldn't quite keep up. Nathaniel poured tea he suspected no one wanted and set it there anyway. "Why did you call me?" he asked Lily after a moment. "My number, I mean." She blinked, embarrassed, proud, stubborn. "I didn't. I called the number on the refrigerator. It was on the paper from Mom's work. It said, 'Call if there's an emergency.' I thought it was for sick emergencies. The others were for when the cold rooms broke." Nathaniel felt something shift inside his chest, a small architecture failing quietly. He knew exactly what sticker she meant. The hazard hotline for equipment failure, not health. A third-party number that should have routed to a call center in Ohio, and then to his compliance team. The child had dialed what the company told its workers to dial when things were dangerous. She had reached him. "How did my phone answer?" he asked himself aloud, more than he asked her. Sophie's voice was thin but pointed. "Because you were meant to hear it." He didn't believe in the universe as scheduler or judge. He believed in cause and effect, and people who made them look like luck. Still, the sentence hung there, inconvenient as a leak. "Those logs," he said carefully, nodding toward the papers. "Why aren't they in the system?" Sophie's mouth flattened. "I submitted them. For weeks. The interface said, 'Received.' And then one day, my login expired. HR told me my position had been consolidated. The new position had a different description. And a different person." She coughed once, steadying the words with a hand. "I still wrote them. Because if something went wrong, I wanted to be able to prove I'd said so." "And you worked for?" He knew, but he needed her to say it. "Cross Logistics," she said, and there was no accusation in it. There didn't need to be. The name did the accusing by itself. His phone buzzed. "Riena. Doctor dispatched. ETA met. Groceries sourced. 30 minutes. Also, Zurich, escalating. Want me to run interference?" He typed back, "Yes, and pull audit logs for Cross Logistics, temperature variance reports, Bay 6, October-November. Flag anything missing from compliance repository." 3 dots pulsed, vanished, returned. On it. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer that one. He turned to the kids. "Do you like pancakes?" he asked, because the grocery delivery would include mix, and because he did not know how to say the other things yet. The littlest one raised both hands like he was at a rally for breakfast. Ben nodded gravely, as if authorizing the motion. Lily looked suspicious of the ruse, and then smiled despite herself. "Okay," Nathaniel said, "then I'll earn my keep." He took off his coat. He rolled his sleeves. He found a pan that had lived a complicated life and coaxed it to heat. He learned that Milo would eat anything if it contained blueberries, and that Ben, when concentrating, stuck out his tongue like a little lightning rod. He learned that Lily did not like to be told something was fine when it obviously wasn't, and that she could crack eggs one-handed. Between batches, he answered 2 emails with ruthless brevity and ignored 6 more. When the groceries arrived, a modest avalanche of bags, the apartment looked different by the mere fact of food. Cans lined themselves up into possibilities. Bread leaned into a basket and became more than starch. It became a plan for tomorrow. Sophie drifted to the doorway in socked feet, the nebulizer treatment having clipped the edge off her breath. "You don't have to do all this," she said. But it was less resistance than it was the reflex of someone who had learned all her requests carried invoices. "I know," he said. "I want to." He surprised himself with the simple truth of it. Her gaze slid to the papers again, then back to him. "I wasn't trying to make trouble at the warehouse," she said, as if she owed him an apology for naming a fire. "I was trying to keep the spinach from thawing and the people from slipping. The sensors were wrong. The fix was cheap. The silence wasn't." "Who told you to be quiet?" Nathaniel asked. She looked at him a long moment. "Do you want the name of the person who said the words, or the person who let the room be one where they could be said?" He felt the hit because he'd aimed that way himself 1,000 times. "Both," he said finally. She nodded, a concession. "Victor Kane," she said. "Regional Vice President. He didn't say lie. He said stability. He said don't overreact. He said we're meeting our KPIs. Don't be the reason we don't." The manager on site signed what he was told to sign. When I wouldn't, my badge stopped working. She looked past him to the window, where snow feathered the glass like checks that wouldn't clear. "I thought I'd made peace with it. And then Lily got tall enough to reach the sticker by the phone." He thought of Victor's immaculate dashboards, the monthly calls where volatility was a sin to be tithed against until it found salvation in a smooth line. He thought of his own emails, the ones that praised consistency like it was a sacrament. "I'm going to look," he said, and he meant it more than the stack. At the system. At what's missing. Sophie's mouth shaped a word she did not say. After a moment, she said a different one. "Why?" "Because once," he said quietly, "my mother died in a building that had just passed inspection. The report said it was safe. The gas line said it wasn't. I told myself that if I ever had the power, the reports wouldn't be lies." Lily had drifted closer, without meaning to, a cup of pancake batter clutched in both hands. "Then don't let them lie," she said simply, as if the problem had always been that no one had instructed the world not to misbehave. He nodded to her like she'd proposed a motion in a meeting, and he was in violent agreement. When he left, the snow had tired of its own drama and settled into the steady kind that could bury a city if left to its habits. He promised Lily he'd be back that evening. He promised Milo more blueberries, which Milo received as a binding legal instrument. He promised Ben that if a fort were to be built, he would bring the architecturally appropriate couch cushions. In the corridor, his phone vibrated again. Rihanna pulled preliminary audit trails. Weird gaps. Looks like someone with elevated permissions bulk deleted variance tickets from the compliance queue. Working theory, they rerouted them to a shadow archive to preserve the checksum counts. Which is genius or criminal? Possibly both. He stopped at the stairwell window and stared out at a city blurred into watercolor. "Name?" he texted. The reply came faster than he wanted it to. Deletion events authorized on a roll tied to Victor Kane. It's masked through service accounts, but the fingerprints aren't careful enough. Nathaniel's reflection in the glass looked like a man learning to recognize himself with one less layer of lacquer. "Bring everything to my office," he wrote. "Tonight." He hesitated and added, "Pull the original hotline routing table too. There's a misconfiguration. A call that should have gone to Ohio came to me." Rena's dots flickered. "On it. Also, Zurich is very angry at not being the center of your universe." "They never were," he typed. Then, unexpectedly, "Thank you." He drove back through streets that were, for once, honest about being difficult to cross. Cross Tower rose from the storm like a ship with too many decks. In the garage, he turned off the engine and sat for a moment, in the kind of silence no soundproofing can buy. A silence that belongs to decisions made and not yet argued with. Upstairs, the lights woke for him. He went first to the office kitchen and made coffee himself, badly. Then to his desk, where the screens blinked to life with graphs that had, hours ago, looked like answers. He didn't touch the mouse. He took out his wallet instead and unfolded a paper napkin, crinkled, smeared with a blue line where a child's crayon had dragged. A stick figure taller than three others stood under an umbrella that covered everyone. Written above it, in careful printing, "Thank you for coming." He set the drawing against the base of his monitor and, for the first time in a very long time, changed the order in which he did things. He called legal and didn't let them talk first. He called compliance and didn't let them say metrics before people. He called ET and asked for the thing he'd never asked for, the messy truth beneath the clean curve. Snow whispered against 40 stories of glass. Somewhere across the river, in an apartment that had learned hope in spare teaspoons, a woman slept an hour without coughing, and a girl stood watch with the serious patience of 8 years. By the time Rena stepped through his door with a folder and the kind of face she reserved for situations that might get someone fired or saved, Nathaniel had a list of names, a plan, and a sense that the evening had only just begun. "Tell me," he said. She did. And while she did, he looked again at the small drawing propped under his screen and thought, not for the first time, that the wrong number had been the first right thing he had done in months. Outside, the city kept its secrets under snow, but inside Cross Tower, the first of them began to thaw. Chapter 2. The Hidden Ledger. The storm had eased overnight, but inside Cross Tower, the air still carried the sting of winter. Nathaniel Cross sat at his desk, sleeves rolled, staring at the drawing Lily had pressed into his hand. An umbrella. 4 figures. The simplicity of it weighed more than the 100-page compliance manuals stacked in the corner. The office door hissed open. Rena Wells entered, black folder clutched to her chest, jaw tense. "You asked for everything," she said. "This is everything." She placed the folder down. "But once you open it, you can't close it again." Nathaniel flipped it open. Inside, spreadsheets bled into logs, audit trails, deletion entries, shadow accounts. Red notations jumped out like cuts. Variance reports marked received, then flagged as deleted within seconds. Dozens of them. Whole months scrubbed clean. At the center of it all, Victor Kane, regional vice president, elevated permissions under service accounts. Every trace led back to him. Genius or criminal? Rena muttered. Probably both. He kept the dashboards perfect, but every time the numbers got ugly, he rerouted them. He made the system lie. Nathaniel leaned back, his reflection fractured across the glass wall behind Rena. For years, he had praised Victor for stability. He realized now that stability had been another word for silence. That afternoon, Nathaniel drove again to Brooklyn. Sunset Avenue looked different in daylight. Less haunted, more tired. Children kicked slush into the street. Laundry sagged from balconies like faded flags. Inside 3C, the air smelled of ginger tea and antibiotic syrup. Sophie was upright, wrapped in a cardigan. Voice steadier, though her skin still carried the flush of fever. Lily and Ben were building a cardboard fort, while Milo clung to Sophie's lap. "You came back," Sophie said, half surprise, half challenge. "I said I would," Nathaniel replied. He placed a grocery bag on the counter. Oranges, fresh bread, milk, more than he remembered buying. "How are you feeling?" "Alive," she answered. Her eyes flicked to the bag, then back to him. That wasn't guaranteed 2 nights ago. He hesitated, then placed the folder on the table. "These are your reports, and the proof that they were erased." Sophie's fingers tightened on the folder before she even opened it. She flipped pages quickly, lips moving as her eyes scanned. "He buried all of it," she whispered. "Every warning, every hazard. And they let him." "Not they," Nathaniel said. His tone was heavy. "Me. I let him. I saw perfect numbers and I applauded them." Silence filled the room, broken only by the soft collapse of the kids' fort. Sophie studied him. "Why show me this? You could hide it, make it vanish like the rest." "Because you're the one person who refused to bend. If I want this company to mean anything, it has to start with you." She shook her head, incredulous. "You think the board will listen to me? A dismissed supervisor? Labeled troublemaker?" "You're not trouble," Nathaniel said. "You're evidence." That evening, Victor Kane walked uninvited into Nathaniel's office. The man's suit was as sharp as his grin, both tailored to cut. "I hear you've been digging," he said smoothly. "Careful. Holes have a way of swallowing their diggers." Nathaniel didn't rise. "You falsified the system." Victor chuckled. "Big word. I optimized it. Directors want clean metrics. I delivered. You're welcome. You erased safety violations. You gambled with lives." Victor leaned closer, voice lowering to a hiss. "And you built an empire on those perfect dashboards. You think the board cares about a few erased reports? They care about contracts, about billions. If you bring this up, they'll burn you, not me." For a moment, Nathaniel saw the truth. Victor wasn't bluffing. The board liked stability more than honesty. Exposing him would mean war, and wars always claimed casualties. Victor smiled thinly. "Enjoy your conscience, Nathaniel. It'll be the last luxury you afford." Then he left, leaving the office colder than before. Back at the apartment, Nathaniel explained everything to Sophie. The risks, the board, Victor's threats. The way the system was designed to crush dissenters. Her boys listened quietly from the couch, wide-eyed. "I can't promise it will be easy," Nathaniel said. "But if you testify, if you stand with me, we can expose him. We can fix this." Sophie shook her head, bitter laugh escaping. "Testify. They'll smear me, call me unstable. They already did." Nathaniel leaned forward, his voice firm. "Then I'll stand with you. Let them say what they will, but they'll have to say it while facing both of us." Silence stretched. Sophie looked down at Lily, who whispered, "Mom, if you don't tell them, won't more people get hurt?" The innocence cut sharper than any argument. Sophie exhaled slowly. "All right, she said at last. But I'm not doing this for your company. I'm doing it because my children deserve a world where truth matters. Nathaniel inclined his head. Then we fight together. Later that night, Nathaniel stood at his office window, the city glowing beneath fresh snow. Rena entered, voice low. If you move against Victor now, he'll come at you hard. The board won't forgive you if this collapses profits. I know, Nathaniel said. His reflection in the glass looked less untouchable, more human. But if I do nothing, I'm no better than him. Rena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then you'd better be ready. Victor Kane doesn't lose quietly. Nathaniel turned from the window. His voice was steady now, no hesitation left. Neither do I. And in that moment, the war truly began. Chapter 3. The Boardroom Storm. The storm outside had ended, but inside Cross Tower, the air was heavier than the snow ever had been. Nathaniel Cross sat in his office before dawn, the skyline still dripping with last night's frost. On his desk lay 2 folders, one full of Victor Kane's spotless manufactured reports, the other brimming with Sophie Hale's handwritten notes and the erased logs Rena had unearthed. Side by side, they looked like 2 versions of the same world. One immaculate lie, one imperfect truth. Rena entered, her usual sharp stride softened by the weight of what was coming. She set a recorder and a laptop on the desk. We have one chance, she said quietly. If Sophie's testimony falters, if Victor corners her with doubt, the board will side with stability. They always do. Nathaniel nodded. Then she doesn't stand alone. That evening, Nathaniel returned to the apartment on Sunset Avenue. Sophie was sitting at the small table, pale but stronger. Lily and her brothers worked on drawings, crayons scattered like confetti across the wood. The warmth of the room fought against the cold leaking through the windows. Nathaniel placed the folder before her. Tomorrow, the board hears everything. It has to come from you. Her eyes traced the papers. You really think they'll believe me? They'll believe the truth, Nathaniel said. Then, after a pause, and they'll believe me when I stand beside you. Ben piped up from the floor. Will the bad man be there? Nathaniel crouched to his level. Yes, but tomorrow, everyone will see who he really is. Lily, clutching her drawing, whispered, Don't let them scare Mom. Nathaniel promised. And for once, he meant a promise not as strategy, but as vow. The next morning, the boardroom gleamed with cold light and polished wood. Directors sat in a row, tablets glowing, expressions carved into corporate neutrality. At the far end, Victor Kane strode in, his smile razor-thin. Confidence hung from his shoulders like armor. The chairman adjusted his glasses. Mr. Cross, you requested this extraordinary session. Present your case. Nathaniel rose slowly, voice calm but deliberate. This company was built on trust, on the promise that numbers reflect reality, not illusion. But our supply chain data has been falsified, reports erased, and the one person who refused to lie was silenced. He motioned toward Sophie. She stood, hands trembling only slightly. Her voice, when it came, was steady. My name is Sophie Hale. I was a safety supervisor. I saw broken equipment, sensors failing, workers injured. I was asked to sign reports saying everything was fine. I refused. Days later, my job vanished. My warnings disappeared. Victor chuckled, leaning back in his chair. Convenient tale. A disgruntled ex-employee inventing noble reasons. Do you have proof? Sophie lifted the folder. Handwritten notes, dated and signed. Rena tapped her tablet, projecting the deleted logs onto the wall, entries erased under Victor's account. The room went still. Victor smirked, unshaken. Handwritten notes can be fabricated. Logs can be doctored. This is flimsy at best, and Mr. Cross risks his title parading ghosts before this board. Nathaniel stepped forward, gaze sweeping across the directors. His words landed one by one, sharp and clear. I once lost my mother because someone signed a false report. That lie killed her. I swore this company would never bury the truth. If protecting perfect numbers means gambling with lives, then I would rather lose my chair than my integrity. The silence that followed was different, uneasy, heavy. Directors glanced at one another. Some shifted, discomfort visible. Sophie's voice cut the tension, softer but strong. You can ignore me, dismiss me. But one day, the families of hurt workers will ask who looked the other way. And you'll remember this moment. Victor leaned forward, eyes glinting. Sentiment. Nothing more. I have independent audits, external consultants verifying zero anomalies. Are you calling them liars, too? He flung documents across the table. Rena stepped in smoothly, her finger tapping the audit headers. These consultants operate under a shell company tied directly to Victor Kane's brother-in-law. So yes, we are calling them liars, because their paycheck depended on it. The boardroom froze. Victor's smile faltered. His eyes darted, but no denial came quickly enough. Mrs. Alvarez, a senior director, folded her hands. Mr. Kane, do you deny this connection? Victor's silence was answer enough. His armor cracked. Nathaniel pressed forward. This company cannot survive on bought numbers. We cannot keep choosing comfortable lies over painful truths. Decide now. Are we led by fear of exposure, or by responsibility to those who trust us? The chairman's eyes lingered on Victor, then shifted to Sophie, then finally to Nathaniel. Effective immediately, he said. Mr. Kane is suspended pending investigation by state regulators. Victor surged to his feet, face flushed, fists clenched, but no rebuttal came. He gathered his folder with shaking hands and stormed out, the door thudding behind him. The room exhaled, shoulders eased. The board had seen enough. When the directors left, the boardroom was almost empty. Only Sophie remained, her folder clasped tight, her shoulders trembling from adrenaline. Nathaniel approached. You stood your ground. She gave a tired smile. Not alone. Rena joined them, setting down a fresh resolution. The board signed off. New safety reporting program. Anonymous, independent. They want you to direct it, Sophie. Her eyes widened. Me? Nathaniel's gaze was steady. You already proved you were willing to stand alone for the truth. Imagine what you can do if the company stands with you. Sophie exhaled, tears bright in her eyes. For the first time, she didn't look like someone fighting to survive. She looked like someone beginning to win. Nathaniel glanced toward the window. Snow still clung to the skyline, but the storm had passed. For the first time in years, the air inside Cross Tower felt clean. And outside, beneath a clearing New York sky, the real battle was only just beginning. Chapter 4. Retaliation. The storm outside had passed, but Victor Kane was far from finished. In the weeks following his suspension, whispers slithered through the corridors of Cross Tower. Anonymous emails arrived in directors' inboxes, alleging Nathaniel had fabricated evidence. A smear campaign painted Sophie Hale as unstable. a disgruntled employee clinging to lies. Tabloids carried headlines questioning why a billionaire CEO spent nights in a Brooklyn apartment with a dismissed supervisor. Nathaniel expected it. He told Rena as much. "Victor doesn't lose quietly," he said, scanning yet another anonymous memo. "He'll try to bury us in mud until we look the same as him." Rena folded her arms. "Then we stay cleaner, louder, and faster. I've traced 2 of the leaks back to Victor's people. He's weaponizing PR firms. We can counter, but it won't be pretty." "Let it get ugly," Nathaniel said. "The truth can survive ugly." At Sunset Avenue, life shifted with strange duality. The boys laughed more freely now, their mother less weighed by fever. Groceries filled cupboards that had once echoed. But the phone rang more often, too. Reporters sniffing for scandal. Neighbors whispering. Sophie felt the tension each time she stepped into the hallway. One evening, she found Nathaniel already seated at her kitchen table, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He was helping Milo assemble a puzzle, brow furrowed as though the cardboard edges were a boardroom strategy. "You shouldn't be here so often," Sophie said quietly, setting her bag down. "They'll use it against you." Nathaniel looked up, eyes steady. "They already are. Might as well earn it." Her lips tilted into a reluctant smile. "You're impossible." "No," he said softly. "Just stubborn." The retaliation came harder. Victor filed an injunction claiming Sophie had stolen company documents. A court date was set, the headlines sharp. Ex-employee accused of data theft in corporate war. Sophie's hands trembled when she read it. "He's going to destroy me," she whispered. "He'll take the boys from me. He'll ruin everything." Nathaniel placed his hand over hers, firm, grounding. "No, he won't. Because this time, you're not alone." Rena prepared their defense with surgical precision. They uncovered that Victor himself had ordered IT staff to alter logs, his fingerprints embedded in metadata he thought erased. "He made one mistake," Rena said, almost smiling. "He underestimated how deep we'd dig." The court appearance was grueling. Victor's lawyers painted Sophie as bitter, unstable, desperate for revenge. But when Nathaniel took the stand, he dismantled their narrative brick by brick. "If Ms. Hale were unstable," he said evenly, "then why did her warnings match every record Victor erased? Why did she predict risks our warehouses later confirmed? She wasn't fabricating. She was fighting for lives." The judge ruled the evidence admissible. Victor's case collapsed in public view. For the first time, Nathaniel saw fear flicker in the man's eyes. That night, Sophie stood on the balcony of her apartment, the city glowing beyond. Nathaniel joined her, a quiet space settling between them. "You risked everything today," she said. "Your company, your name." Nathaniel's gaze lingered on the skyline. "A name isn't worth much if it's not tied to something true." He turned to her. "You reminded me of that." Her breath caught. "I only did what I had to." "And I'll do the same," he replied, his voice low but certain. "For you. For them." Inside, the boys were asleep, sprawled across blankets and pillows, like conquerors of a smaller, gentler war. Sophie glanced back at them, then at Nathaniel. For the first time, the fortress she'd built around herself cracked. Not from weakness, but from trust. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," Nathaniel said. "Let me be steady with you." The words hung between them, not polished, not strategic. Real. Sophie's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. Slowly, she nodded. And in that nod, something shifted. Not the end of their battles, but the beginning of something neither of them had dared imagine. Back at Cross Tower, Victor was already planning his next strike. But for the first time, Nathaniel and Sophie were ready. Not as two people caught in a storm, but as allies, standing together against it. Chapter 5. The Breaking Point. Victor Kane was cornered, and like any predator with nowhere to run, he bared his teeth. Days after losing in court, his retaliation reached new heights. Anonymous blogs accused Nathaniel of funneling money offshore. A staged whistleblower claimed Sophie had manipulated safety reports herself. Worse, shipments were sabotaged. Pallets toppled in warehouses, alarms tripped in cold storage. Chaos rippled through Cross Industries, and every headline screamed one question: had Nathaniel Cross lost control? Rena burst into Nathaniel's office with a tablet in hand. "It's orchestrated," she snapped. "Every false report, every rumor, it all traces back to Victor's network. He's desperate, but he's good at making desperation look like fact." Nathaniel scanned the data. The board was fracturing, half still loyal, the other half circling like sharks sensing blood. "Then we drag him into daylight," Nathaniel said. "No whispers, no rumors, evidence." Rena hesitated. "That means making everything public. If we fail, you lose the company." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Then so be it. Better to lose a title than to let him keep poisoning this place." That night, in Sophie's apartment, the tension was palpable. She was sitting at the table, reviewing documents Nathaniel had brought. Lily and her brothers listened from the couch, too old now to be shielded from fear. "They're saying I lied," Sophie whispered, "that I made everything up to hurt the company." Nathaniel reached across the table, steady. "Victor is loud because he's afraid. You stood up once, and it shook him. We stand up again, together. And it breaks him." Sophie's hands trembled on the papers. "And if it breaks us too?" He met her eyes. "Then at least it will break us on the side of truth." Lily climbed down from the couch and placed a crayon drawing beside the documents. 4 figures holding hands beneath a sun. "You're not alone, Mom," she said. The simplicity of it steadied Sophie more than any speech could. The next morning, Nathaniel called a press conference. Reporters crammed into the hall, cameras flashing, murmurs rising like static. Beside him, Sophie stood with Rena at her other side. Her palms were damp, but her shoulders were square. Nathaniel spoke first. This company was never meant to be built on lies. Yet lies infected it. Reports were falsified, violations erased. Victor Kane orchestrated a fraud that endangered workers and families. And when Sophie Hale refused to sign her name to those lies, he tried to erase her. Tonight, the truth comes back. He gestured to Sophie. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out steady. "I wrote those reports. I saw the danger. I refused to bury it. For that, I lost my job. But I kept the notes. Not because I thought I'd win anything, but because I wanted proof, for my children, that I told the truth." Gasps rippled as Rena projected documents onto the wall. System logs, timestamps, metadata tied to Victor's account. Pages that showed how the safety hotline had been rerouted, how reports were deleted in batches. The evidence was irrefutable. Questions erupted from the crowd. Why now? Why risk everything? "Mr. Cross, are you prepared to lose your empire over this?" Nathaniel didn't hesitate. Yes, because integrity is worth more than an empire built on shadows. That afternoon, chaos swirled in the boardroom. Directors argued, voices sharp as broken glass. Some accused Nathaniel of betrayal. Others admitted relief that the truth had surfaced. In the center, the chairman finally spoke. Enough. Victor Kane has endangered this company, its workers, and its future. Effective immediately, his termination is permanent. Regulators will be notified, and Nathaniel Cross retains the authority to rebuild. Victor, dragged into the room under guard, exploded. You think you've won? You've chained yourselves to a bleeding heart and a liar. You'll sink this company. His words bounced off walls that no longer belonged to him. For the first time, his voice sounded small. Sophie rose from her chair. Her voice was calm, cutting. No, Victor. You sank at the moment you chose numbers over lives. The room stilled. Even the directors who had doubted her bowed their heads slightly, as though the truth had finally grown too heavy to ignore. Victor was escorted out. His storm had broken. What remained was silence, and in that silence, possibility. Later, in the quiet of Sunset Avenue, Sophie sat on the balcony with Nathaniel. The city glowed beneath them, alive, renewed. It's over, she whispered. Nathaniel shook his head. No, this part is over. Now comes the rebuilding. Sophie smiled faintly, eyes glistening. Then let's rebuild something better. Nathaniel reached for her hand, steady and unhurried. Together. And for the first time, the future no longer felt like a storm waiting to break, but like a dawn rising over the city they both had chosen to fight for. Chapter 6. A new dawn spring returned to New York with a gentleness the city rarely showed. Snow melted from the rooftops, and light cut through the glass of Cross Tower in warm, golden angles. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Cross walked through his company's halls without the familiar weight of perfection pressing on his shoulders. The silence of falsified numbers had been broken. In its place was something noisier but honest. Employees filing reports freely, managers adjusting practices, auditors asking real questions instead of staging answers. Sophie Hale's name was no longer erased. It was printed boldly on the first page of the company's new program, Director of Independent Safety Reporting. And every time she swiped her badge through the turnstiles, the quiet nods from workers told her the fight had mattered. One afternoon, Nathaniel joined her in the internal audit room. Managers sat in a semicircle, listening as Sophie explained the hotline's protocols: anonymous submissions, external review, mandatory escalation. When one manager scoffed, "So now anyone can bypass us. We're drowning in numbers already." Sophie met his gaze steadily. The numbers don't matter if lives are at stake. Reports aren't noise. They're warnings. If you can't tell the difference, you shouldn't be in this room. The silence that followed was not polite. It was unsettled. But it held. Nathaniel, standing at the back, felt something shift. He hadn't spoken, hadn't needed to. Sophie had claimed the ground herself, and the room knew it. Afterward, in the hallway, Sophie caught his eye. "You could have stepped in." "I could have," he admitted. "But then the victory wouldn't have been yours, and it needed to be." She smiled faintly. "You're learning." For the first time in a long time, Nathaniel laughed, a sound not rehearsed or sharpened, but unguarded. At Sunset Avenue, life began to resemble something more than survival. Sunday mornings became ritual. Pancakes on the stove, Lily and Ben arguing over chocolate chips versus blueberries. Milo tugging Nathaniel's sleeve to help build forts out of couch cushions. Sophie would sip her coffee at the counter, smiling at the unlikely picture. A billionaire once defined by numbers now fighting over syrup portions with 3 children. One evening, after the boys had fallen asleep, Sophie stepped onto the balcony. Nathaniel joined her, jacket draped loosely over his shoulders. The city stretched out before them, alive and glowing. "I spent years telling myself I only had to be strong for them," Sophie said softly. "That if I held everything together, it would be enough. But lately, I think, they don't just need strong, they need steady. And so do I." Nathaniel's hand found hers, unhurried. "Then let me be steady with you." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. She squeezed his hand, and no words were needed beyond that. 1 year later, a bright spring afternoon painted the city in green and gold. The camera of memory might have tracked from the new plaque in Cross Tower, Independent Safety Office, Director Sophie Hale, to a park near the bay. Nathaniel lay on the grass, jacket folded beneath his head, while the boys chased each other with paper airplanes. Sophie sat beside him, leaning lightly against his shoulder. Jonah's plane fell short. Nathaniel rose, showed him how to adjust the wings. This time, the paper soared. The boys' laughter carried across the breeze, brighter than any skyline. Sophie watched, her smile quiet but full. She whispered almost to herself, "That call was never a mistake." Nathaniel glanced back, catching her words. He didn't answer with a speech, only wrapped his arm around her, steady, as the boys laughed and the city shone under a clear sky. The wrong number had changed everything. A man who once measured life by spotless charts had discovered that truth mattered more than perfection. And a woman who once fought alone had found she no longer needed to. The storm had passed. What remained was not silence, but a future, messy, honest, and theirs to build together. The story of Nathaniel Cross and Sophie Hale reveals a simple yet often forgotten truth. The truth may hurt, but lies destroy. Nathaniel, once a CEO who believed spotless numbers were the ultimate measure of success, was forced to confront reality. Behind those polished charts were lives at risk. A single, wrong number stripped away the illusion and reminded him of his humanity, reshaping the way he led, lived, and even loved. Sophie, a single mother, chose honesty over safety. She knew speaking out would cost her job, her reputation, and her peace of mind. Yet, by standing firm, her small voice became the catalyst that exposed corruption and saved countless others. Key lessons: mistakes can open the right path. What seemed like a meaningless misdial became the spark that changed many lives. Truth needs defenders. Even a single voice, fragile and isolated, can create impact when someone dares to stand beside it. Power without responsibility is hollow. Nathaniel learned that a CEO's title means nothing if it isn't rooted in trust and integrity. Family and compassion matter most. Sophie's children, and her determination to protect them, became the compass that led Nathaniel back to the humanity he had long buried. In the end, the story reminds us that, in a world full of deception, it only takes one person brave enough to speak the truth, and another willing to listen, for everything to change. Sometimes, even a wrong number can change a life. This story reminds us that truth, no matter how small, can light the way through the darkest lies. If this touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories.